Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Toby Birch, who is a senior investment manager at Gower Financial Services. We're going to take a look at how markets have been affected by wars over the last 100 years or a little bit more. Toby loves his history, so looking forward to
Mm.
hearing his views and seeing what lessons, if any, have been learned. Um, as ever, all opinions are personal and no investment advice is being given. So we got rid of that caveat. Let's start off with World War One because I guess that was the first war where markets got really affected in a very short space of time.
It was the first globalist war, really. It's uh, obviously had lots of smaller conflicts in the Victorian era, and it really was a relatively peaceful century, bizarrely enough. But this was the first kind of almost like climbers on a rope where everyone got pulled in via various treaties,
Mm.
and markets reflected this, as you say, very quickly. So we had to have some closures, not just of stock markets, but all kinds of bank holidays as well to stop a run on the banks. So Lloyd George closed the banks for a few days just to stop this panic, because people were just obviously trying to get out of paper money into gold at the time. And we can't have that. You can't have your money back. So you can get paper, as much paper as you like, but
But
not.
bearing in mind America is 3,000 miles away or whatever, they reacted quite significantly, didn't they? Closing the stock exchange.
It was, yes, it was a simultaneous sequence of events. Really, it again, it's all part of this idea that if you have a run on the banks or stock market collapse, all looks bad for for the domestic economy, and it's bad PR as well. So it really is a case of, and again, we had this after 9/11 where you close the stock market for a bit, then you reopen tentatively, usually as a quick sell off,
Yeah.
but over time, things do recover. And over the course of a war as well, you do find that markets are very accurate at predicting turning points. So I'll give examples of the Second World War, but the First War is a good example. But also in the sort of March of 1918, when the Germans counterattacked, there was a sell-off as well. So it's all, markets are a very good thermometer for what's going on in reality, and obviously get some overshoots and over sell-offs at the
Yeah.
time as well.
Yeah. Yeah. How did they actually communicate? Did they have the ticker tape in those days in
I
the
mean,
States?
originally had the this reason why the dollar sterling exchange rate is called cable, because the cable that linked Britain and America across the Atlantic, and that was first laid about 1858.
Right.
So that was, I think had the first initial messages, but one of the, I think the first 10 messages is also for the exchange rate of the dollar and sterling. So that cable name has stuck. But yes, the ticker tape was the original communication for prices. So what happens is you have all these telegraph poles laid out across the states, and a pulse would come down the wire and would trigger a cog to be a certain price or symbol. So it's a very effective way of communicating prices. So there's a very famous trader from the 20s called Jesse Livermore. He used a phrase called listening to the tape, which
Hmm.
is where the tickers rattled away. So you could tell when there was like over exuberance or excitement or chatter. And because there's so much paper made from these little dots, you used to have obviously the ticker tape parades in New
Yeah.
York.
Yeah.
Throw all the
As a
whole tape out.
celebration.
Exactly.
Yeah. 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 But I mean, obviously, if everyone's selling, that thing's going to be ticking away like the
It's going
clappers, isn't it?
melting down, yeah. And of course, then that's a contrarian signal where you have today you have the fear and greed index as a measure of when things are oversold. There's maximum fear, and human nature just loves to run either way. Fight or fight or flight. On the other hand, there's all the greed side as well. So when things get to extreme, they're always a good indicator to say it's gone too far. Let's go the other way. So traders use this all the time.
So nothing new there.
Not at all. Just human behaviour is the big constant in all these things.
What was it? Greed and fear.
Yeah, fear and greed index. That's right. I use it every month for the investment committees. It's a really good.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was really surprised. Did that bit of research to see that the New York Stock Exchange was closed for, I think it was 4 months. That's a
yeah,
long time.
it's looking back. I mean, yeah, but I think the for 9/11 it was a matter of days.
Yeah,
But yeah, that really um, really was a long haul, and I think it's a way. It's not just stopping panic; it's stopping too much hoarding of assets as well, so
yeah,
people can't get rid of the gold. And obviously, the gold the gold standard got suspended in 1914 by Britain, and after the war, one of Churchill's errors was to go back on the gold standard at the wrong level.
yeah,
So it really seized up the country. This is why I had the strikes of 1926 and the like. But I think one of the, as well as stock markets, gold and precious metals are very good storyteller for history. As a chap called Dominic Frisby published a book last year called The Secret History of Gold.
hmm
And I was just in touch with them the other week. And this really goes to great, in very enjoyable detail of the movement of precious metals across borders, and it's been a bedrock of currencies for a long time, really until the 70s when Nixon sort of bailed out of the gold exchange standard. Then it's sort of just a fascinating cocktail of humanity looking at stock markets and precious metals, and it really doesn't change.
yeah. I mean, interestingly, you mentioned Churchill, but Gordon Brown's a bit guilty, isn't he, of flogging off stuff on the cheap?
It was the but one of the worst for someone who's used prudent as
Yeah,
his go-to watchword. Yeah, so he sold I think it's about half of Britain's gold in the late 90s at the
yeah,
bottom of it wasn't just the bottom of the market, he made the bottom of the market by announcing it,
yeah,
announcing his auctions. So it really brutalized the price. And so yeah, and sadly the money was used to buy the euro at the time. So it was all this big great dream that the euro is going to be the great uh, counter to the US dollar.
mm,
So obviously, half our assets went into propping up this new currency.
yeah,
So there you go, human behavior, and it's all about. I mean, religion plays a part in wars as well, and uh, often these things are a kind of cult, whether it's the European project. Get often these things are founded on good ideas and humanitarian context. Then they get corrupted and they become something you can't question. A Euro denier. You're a very evil person for daring to disagree with things like that.
Um, I mean, looking at gilts, they got a bit of war finance underway in the First World War.
Again, this is another tale of why you shouldn't lend money to the government, because it had a lot of propaganda going on. So I was looking into the histories recently where the initial auctions weren't very well taken up, in
Mm,
spite of quite tempting yields, and the government at the time were threatening, banks and insurance companies of confiscating their assets if they didn't underwrite these things. So the first auctions ended up with the Bank of England having to mop up the issues, and eventually got the propaganda going, and had like tanks in Trafalgar Square as part of the process to sell it to the public. So the poorer public, including a lot of women who'd been working for the first time in World War One, put their faith in the government, and ended up not getting the money back. Well, these bonds weren't paid off till 2015. And
yeah.
that's only because quantitative easing made interest rates so low. George Osborne, uh, cleared off the final bit of debt, but it really was a mass con to fleece people of the money and not pay it back, because inflation just destroyed the value over the course of 100 years. So we say not for widows and orphans. That applies to government debt as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing that I found interesting was the fact that back in those times, £1 would buy you £4 93 $4.93.
It's an incredible figure. I mean, really, the First World War. didn't quite. I think the sinking of the Titanic coincided with the peak of the British Empire, and it was all downhill from there. So although the exchange rate was like by $5, um, it's not just that the weakness of the pound itself buying less dollars, but the dollar itself was going down. So you've
Yeah.
got a double whammy as a sterling person, even as a dollar holder. That's devalued massively over the last 100 years in terms of gold or oil or property. So it's often the the money itself is just a measure of the devaluation.
Yeah.
So prices go up, it's actually the currency weakening over time.
Yeah.
And so again, it's always the public who get devalued from their savings or their earnings, which just can't keep up with this constant watering down of money by government.
Yeah. And they're responsible for it all, aren't they, really?
Ultimately, and again, go back to a war theme. It's just one, again, to use Churchill again, we've often used this phrase, history is one damn thing after another, which is his quote. And it just seems to go on and on. You go, obviously, Vietnam broke the gold standard, had the inflation push, and just keep on having these wars that create yet more debt and yet more devaluation. And it's just like a rolling, like a snowball that keeps rolling up and up, like debt itself. So I think over time you do find some commonalities of human history that involve debt, domestic unrest, commodities. Also, migration has been a big part of warfare over thousands of years. And these things are very cyclical. So although we think, well, it's always different, it never really is.
It was interesting also to note that by 1922, the German economy had declined by 90%,
Mm.
90%. So not only did they lose the war, they lost, a lot of their money en route, and that
So,
created a mass inflation, presumably.
yeah, it's that the economy is brutalized. I think the French are very keen to. It all goes back a step. You always got to unpeel history like an onion,
Mm,
and it goes back to the Franco-Prussian War when the Germans imposed reparations on the French. They insisted on reparations after World War One, and the whole thing just got worse and worse. So, always had the Weimar Republic and mass inflation. And again, as ever, the government resorts to confiscation of assets. So the thing about the hyperinflation of the 19 up to the 20s was not about printing money. And as I've said before in these conversations, the money printing was a symptom of the underlying cause, which is loss
mm,
of faith. And this confiscation or threatened confiscation of assets just was the last straw. Everyone had to get out of cash, just buy anything tangible, and that was. It's all part of a process that builds on this government theme of confiscation and war, and it just
yeah.
goes on and on. I'm afraid. So
Le-
they eventually they got over it by backing the Reichsmark with land and real assets. It kind
Yeah.
of put a
Okay.
skid under it.
Let's get on to World War Two.
Yeah.
Um, Once again, major declines, um, uh, but the actual American economy, the stock market, improved, didn't it, during the World War Two?
They were a massive beneficiary,
Mm,
not just of making loans to Britain, but in their manufacturing, they hoovered up. They ended up having about 2/3 of the world's gold as well.
yeah.
Some of that, again, if you read the Dominic Frisby's book, some of that was fairly clandestine accumulation of precious metals from the continent, let's say. And so they were huge beneficiaries. It's great business, and it still is. And so Eisenhower referred to the industrial military complex after the war, but when he became president, and you got these vested interests that just promote warfare continuously. And again, we've got a lot of military connections, and it's not something to celebrate. It's having this complex, entire economy geared towards warfare,
Not much
and
morality there, then.
it's today's a great example.
Yeah. Not
No,
much morality.
yeah, no, it's against the principles of capitalism. I mean, this is the 250th anniversary of the Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations book,
Yeah.
and it really has been undermined. I mean, people blame capitalism, but it's crony capitalism, that really is this kind of Frankenstein that's morphed out of good principles.
Yeah. I see that during the war, um, US inflation went from 2.1% to 13.2% by May 1942. So, what sort of indication is that as to how things are going?
It's a very common factor because the in those days inflation was a lot more geared towards commodities, and now it's more like service based. So though oil prices are pushing up now, it should be relatively muted compared to the Second World War. And the worst case was in the American Civil War,
Yeah,
when commodities went crazy, and you really had severe inflationary impact. So it was, in relative terms, quite muted in the Second World War. And yeah, moving over time nowadays, although currency is being devalued a lot, the impact of commodity inflation, um, I wouldn't say it's relatively muted because people got to live off real things, but the way the inflation indices are created is you strip out uh, you know inflationary things like food and energy and leave whatever's left behind. So on the surface, it doesn't look as
excuse
bad,
me.
but in reality, we're all suffering. If you
Yeah,
don't have assets, if you depend on your wages, you're pretty screwed.
yeah, and I mean, once again, at the end of the war, looking at the victors, market grew. German market was effectively destroyed by 1947, and the Japanese were totally wiped out.
Yeah. And this is where we had some sensible heads at the end of the Second World War, because had the Marshall Plan to rebuild
Mm,
Europe and Japan through these loan facilities, and the idea was to nurture the countries rather than punish them, which was one of the few times had great statesmen understanding what to do. So part of the new Bretton Woods or fixed exchange rate mechanism was to really take Japan and Germany under the wing and allow
yeah,
them to keep their currencies at a level that made it much better for them to manufacture. So, as you know, Japan and Germany were big economic powerhouses after the
yeah,
war,
yeah,
and complete rebound is exactly what you want. You want peace through prosperity, not punishment.
yeah,
So it was a great period. But again, come back to war with the Vietnam War, that undermined the entire structure of having the dollar as the kind of bastion of stability, because they were just printing money to fight war again, and the whole thing broke down. So as we said before, when the gold exchange standard broke down in '71, then had oil crises on top of that, and the big inflationary burst of the '70s. Then into the '80s, you had the massive interest rate rises. So
yeah,
it's almost like a rolling feast of one
yeah, yeah.
cause and effect.
Let's move on to the Falklands because the British pound fell in the US and the European trading um, went down. Gold prices rose slightly at the point where Mrs. Thatcher decided she was going to go and defend the
Mm.
Channel Islands. And sorry, the Channel Islands, the Falkland
Well,
Islands.
that's Second World War. They didn't do it that time, but yeah.
Sorry about that, folks. A Freudian slip, I think.
Not that we're chippy about being abandoned by the British, but
But
yes,
what are your views on the Falklands? I mean, it had to be done, of course.
at the time, yeah, it was so Lady Thatcher was very unpopular at the time, because we talked about the interest rates being hiked. This is what was going on in America, where you had close to 20% interest rates, and this had an impact on Britain. So I remember it well through my sort of teenage years, the
Yeah,
kind of recessions and mass unemployment, and this was uh, really it's older. When America sneezes, Europe catches a cold. We had very high rates, having to reform industry, and very poor union practices at the time, which were inflationary in themselves. So it was a pretty grim time for all. And in a sense, it was a lucky break for Margaret Thatcher at the time, and it did unify the country. And because things were so grim domestically, this is often a theme that is used in the past. So Bismarck used it in I think the 1870s. He'd always use the phrase, "The Reich is in danger," and then that'll give you carte blanche to do what you like. So it was a fortunate timing, and it sort of broke that broke that mass sense of, it's well beyond end of empire. It's just a sense that the country was just run to the ground in the 1970s, and suddenly had this, the royal wedding, then you had the Falklands, Reign Embassy siege. It kind of just spurred this new, um, go-getting time of the 80s. Like it or love it, I really enjoyed it.
Me
But it just
too.
felt
Me
a sense
too.
of purpose and a
Mm.
sense of positivity that was very much lacking.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned gold. That gold does tend to spike in the early days of war, as we saw with the first Gulf War. Had a bit of a spike and it came off again. So it's not, people talk about as hedge against war inflation. It's not always the case.
Yeah. Did I tell you the tale? We visited Argentina and we
Okay.
got on the wrong bus. Um, there was 38 Germans and Christine and me, and the guide who was half Argentinian, half German, got on. And he said a few questions. He said, "Who was the greatest leader of the 20th century?" And Christine sort of whispered, "Churchill." We all kept quiet, and he said, "It was Churchill, Churchill."
uh,
And the whole tour was, us gradually cringing lower and lower in the seats. And the other thing was, he said Mrs. Thatcher was right to sink the Belgrano. It was going
yeah.
around in a circle.
I
So
mean,
that's quite incredible, wasn't it, really?
yeah. I mean, again, Argentina is a good example of domestic unrest. Create a war to cover up what's going wrong domestically, and have a banner of reclaiming long lost territory. Again, this theme of land, commodities, domestic unrest, debt, it just keeps on. I often use the phrase, it's like a kaleidoscope where you got a few components which are always the same, those few
Yeah.
bits of glass or bead, but history has a way of twisting the kaleidoscope, and you come up with, you've got the same ingredients but a different picture every time, and that's the way to think of this. So you've always got the same inputs, but it's never quite the same. Hence the phrase, it rhymes but doesn't repeat.
Yeah. Moving on to Iran, we've got to throw religion into the mix.
Well, that's another factor which always comes up.
Yeah. um, what are your views on it?
Again, a lot of West people think of Islam as one thing, and of course, there's lots of
Yeah.
subsectors,
Yeah.
and Sunni and Shian. So I think in the Middle East they are upset with Iranians because a lot of the Gulf states have spent a fortune diversifying their economies out of oil into tourism, and now that's
Yeah.
been blown apart. So they're very upset. Whatever happens to oil price, it's not going to make up for that loss of infrastructure spending. So you look at the Grand Prix in Bahrain and Saudi, they're going to get
Mm. They've
binned,
cancelled.
you know, and so it's massively frustrating. Iran has funneled a lot of money into other Gulf states over time, but I think you've always got to be wary that it's the divisions within the Middle East that are as important as the headline events of Iran versus the West. So there's always an undertone and undercurrent that we don't really appreciate with what's going on. So I think it looks, again, it all looks really grim. There's no kind of, can't see any silver lining to this at the moment.
No.
Normally you see something, but it's so haphazardly done. And I think Trump has done some good things. He just seems to be shoot from the hip when it comes to these ideas. And whole theme that he got elected on was we're America first. We're going to
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
the 1920s approach of we're going to look inward. We're not going to be the world's policeman. And for some reason, that's just fallen apart. And I get the Venezuela thing, and the domestic people are probably better off as a result. But you're now going to get a combination of America and Israel probably bombing the hell out of Iran.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yet another
And
place.
of course, Iran was also running the proxies of Hezbollah, Hamas, and
Hmm.
the what are the pirates called? Houthis?
The Houthis, is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's uh, again, it's all part of. Again, you talk about cutting the head off the snake, but
Yeah.
like Jason the Argonauts, where you chop the head off the Hydra and two others
Yeah.
appear.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a the unintended consequences are something I always bang on about, and this is one of them. So the warfare now it's so drone orientated. My son's now left the military, where he's a sniper, now he's a drone operator, and yeah, it's just he builds many warships as like. Not that Britain have got any to send to the Gulf, but, or
Oh,
get them any
that was
appropriate time.
dreadful.
Just it just feels so ashamed of what's happened to the country and the military. But the drone warfare really takes it almost to being like almost like the French resistance in the war. You've got little
Mm,
cells, um, and, and and these drones are crazy. My son sent me some footage from Ukraine the other week, where he's just been spending some time, and he's seeing these Jahid uh, drones come over, almost like little mini Concords,
yeah.
and they're just so hard to defend against. So
Mm,
you got all the Iranians do is it's like any guerrilla warfare. You don't have to come out and fight them, on the battlefield. You just have to nibble at the edges and bite the heels, and the impact elsewhere on insurance, energy, fertilizer.
yeah. Yeah, it's a real worry, isn't it, from that point of view? How much explosive does a drone carry then in terms of its destructive power?
It does vary quite a bit. So the one I just mentioned, that they actually almost like virtual like little missiles,
Yeah,
um, on what's that? Yeah, they're kind of a missile type quality, but you can have quite varying amounts, up to tens of kilos on smaller versions. These are operated by fiber optic cable, which can be like 5 or 10 kilometers long. So there's a whole arena of different types of drones, and then over time you develop counter warfare through electronic warfare to block signals,
mm,
and to catch the drones and to try and blow them out of the sky. And obviously, the kind of Jake, you know, David and Goliath comes in because America is stopping these things with very expensive Patriot missiles, and they're destroying objects which are many a fraction of their value. So,
yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of war of attrition, this is another factor to take into account, that you
So
spend far
I
more
mean,
defending
it,
than you do on
do,
attack.
do you think Israel is at further risk than with the Iron Dome if they're sort of putting up all these missiles to shoot down things? When do they run out of missiles?
I think they can. They're so geared to military manufacture. Again,
Yeah,
it makes you drop your head in your hands. A lot of our munitions went to the Israelis are fine. Their their tech is so advanced, um, that I don't think that's going to be an issue, and their firepower is really off the scale. So, in terms of things escalating from there, I don't think that's an issue. Obviously, they're taking the offensive, and uh, are becoming kind of a mini me of America in terms of bombing things. So
yeah, yeah.
it's
So
yeah, it'll just escalate.
is Iran going to run out of drones?
Potentially, it depends on the sanctions that. Again, you talk about unintended consequences. Like South Africa, you had sanctions on oil, so they came up with you know a domestically manufactured version,
Yeah.
uh, and same with Germany in the wartime. So it's like a comedy of errors going on. Yes, sanctions can work to an extent, but it's a pretty big country, a lot of people, and quite a lot of resources, and they've been doing, they've been um, under under pressure for decades. You go back to 1980, since
Mm,
the Shah was deposed. They've had time to accumulate, and I'm sure they've got plenty of stockpiles, and other people will supply them raw materials surreptitiously as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you think, on the grounds that they appeared to be on the brink of coming out with a nuclear weapon, that justifies the invasion?
Hmm. It's always this casus belli, the cause of war. 'Cause the had the same with Iraq in 1990. You look back at the discussions at the time, and it was very much a manufactured war, uh,
Yeah,
with Tony Blair being like the poodle to justify the whatever the time frame was. We're X minutes from a weapon of mass destruction going off. It's the same old thing that
yeah,
uh, this idea that Iran has nuclear weapons is probably nonsense. Um, have they been trying to do it? Yeah, well, why not? If you want to be safe, you get nuclear weapons. It's like Israel and France.
mm,
You accumulate nuclear power and nuclear weaponry to protect
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
And if you look at a map of Iran and the number of bases around it, it's like they're not exactly invading anyone. You know what I mean? They're surrounded, so you can see
yeah,
it from their point of view as well.
yeah. But anyway, I mean that appears to be the justification, doesn't it?
There's always some justification, and even if it's shown to be a complete lie, like the Vietnam War.
Mm,
Remember the book published later called "A Bright Shining Lie." It almost doesn't matter what the excuse is. It's all systems go. Here's the rhetoric. Do not question what we say. Otherwise, you're a traitor. Was go for it, and it's almost like um, a monster that gets unleashed. Just don't know where it's going to trample or end up,
yeah,
crashing into and destroying stuff. It's the same old. Keep talking about history and cycles. It's all part of the same thing.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, ultimately, the markets will recover, won't they?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at you just take the last 15 years as an example, you see that pretty much every year there's a sell off of between 10 and 20%.
Yeah,
Yet most of the time the market ends up much, with good, strong, positive results. In the last 15 years, there's been three exceptions. Probably the worst one was 2022 when bond markets got walloped as well as stock markets.
yeah,
So that's probably the worst case. I'm hoping that doesn't happen again because it's very rare. But on the whole, you always get this fear and sell off, but the market keeps going up. And that could be a reflection of money being devalued over time as
yeah.
well.
That I mean, that's really what it is, isn't it?
But yeah, partially, and there are substantial profit growth
No,
within this sort of Mag Seven area as well. With this AI spending, it really is quite something. So there's genuine earnings there. It's not all speculative hype like was in the late 90s.
mm,
So
mm.
yeah, it's got a combination of real earnings, currency devaluation, which kind of means you need to be in real assets of some form or in equities.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just get whittled.
Coming back to your point about the 20% dip,
Mm.
I think everyone expected that to happen in any case. It just seems that this war has triggered it a little bit more quickly. But my question is, are we going to get another dip after the war's sorted?
I think potentially, actually, got with all this disruption going on, the inflation, it's just not going to go away easily. We've already had a release of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, so that's
Mm.
got to get refilled. It's been like when you get fog in the Channel Islands, the air crew just don't magically appear in the same place. Things have got to get back and right people, right place, and
Mm.
ships moving. Insurance rates will and shipping rates will go up. So it's a bit like in like 6 years ago, COVID time, where the supply chain got whacked. It gets sort of dislocated. It takes time to heal.
Yeah,
So you can have the President Trump might say war's over, all's good, but at the same time you then have that lag effect of inflation coming through. The UK is already the markets are discounting no further rate cuts this year.
right.
So whereas the states there might be, but ours have just our expectations have been just wiped out. So no rate cuts. Got people's mortgages, like 5-year mortgages maturing. They're going to be worse off.
Mm.
Got obviously supermarkets and petrol suppliers are gouging the public with price rises because they buy the fuel months in
Yeah,
advance.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
No reason to put up prices. I was
No.
in the UK over the weekend, and it's literally you're watching diesel prices clock up every day. It's insane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, there we are. Anyway. I think we've just about come to the end
Oh,
of our
yeah,
time
really.
today.
Gosh, it was shot by.
As ever, I've
That's
really
good.
enjoyed our chat, and
Thank you.
we'll have another one later on in the year. Perhaps
Excellent.
things will have changed a little bit, and you can make some prognostications about future trends. Who knows? But many thanks, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. Good to
Take
speak to
care.
you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.